This is Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech 5 Radio, spinning up another one mic stand, continuing our conversations with Comcast and just some of the incredible work that they are doing to bridge the digital divide. Too often we don't hear some of these stories, but they're happening. In fact, there's like $1 billion commitment over the next 10 years to try to bridge this divide that's become so apparent, over the COVID pandemic and everything else ensuing around that. And today we're talking to Josephine Posti. She is the director of PR at Comcast, and we're going to be talking about all things with Lift Zones. These things are so awesome, a great way to get people access to really good internet connectivity. So Joe, welcome to the show today. So glad to have you here. And I can't wait to tell the story because I think there's some great stuff going on and some great partnerships that you guys are building, not just here in Pittsburgh, but across Western Pennsylvania and down to West Virginia and everything like that. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great being here today, Jonathan.
So let's start with, what's going on right now, with Comcast. I mean, obviously during the pandemic, you guys have stepped up like it is like no one's business to really ensure that everybody has access to really good internet connection, because as we've all learned over the past years, this is an essential thing. and not to borrow off your name, Internet Essentials, of course.
Well, that's a really good place to start, though, because Internet Essentials really is at the heart of the Lift Zone program. And okay. I would say that the start of this story, when the pandemic started, we did realize right away the importance of making sure that everybody has good internet connectivity, high-speed internet at home to be able to do so much that we right. didn't realize we were going to have to do, everything
exactly.
From learning at home if you're a student. But if you look at what adults went through, adults also had to pivot and not only start to work remotely, but also, we had adults who were applying and looking for jobs online, people doing telemedicine. So if you back up and you look at the start of the pandemic and that $1 billion commitment that we made over 10 years, Internet Essentials was at the heart of it. Let's make sure that we are really connecting folks in our footprint who do not currently have internet and may not be able to afford internet at home.
Exactly.
So one of the things we started with was looking at, how do we bridge that gap? Internet Essentials has been around since 2011, but obviously there were folks who either were not aware of it or just had not had connectivity enabled yet. So locally, some of the things we did is we reached out to different school districts. So this would be, people like Pittsburgh Public Schools, McKeesport, Ambridge, the Housing Authority for the City of Pittsburgh. And we said, hey, how can we bridge that gap even more effectively? And so partners like that, we created these Internet Essential partnership programs where we worked with them to develop some additional funding mechanisms through those partners to actually provide free Internet Essentials to families. Because for some families, even that $9.95 a month
that can be too much. Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I love being able to drive this message home over and over again, because I think people just often forget that this is what Comcast is up to in this day and age in order to ensure everybody has access to the internet.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were able to connect locally hundreds of families through those partners. And even, some folks like former Steelers, William Gay, Charlie Bass, they stepped up and they said, you know what, we want to be a part of the equation. We would like to provide some additional funding to make sure that folks in some of the, our challenged pockets of your footprint are connected as well.
It never hurts to have the Steelers on your side, that's for sure.
Exactly. I know that helped a lot. So that momentum really helped to get a lot of folks connected at home who are not previously connected. But, as you can imagine, you still have situations where even if you have people who now have high-speed internet at home, there are times where kids are out of the home doing out-of-home learning. You know, if the adults at home are working and kids are in some kind of out-of-school or after-school program at a local Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, community centers, so forth, right?
Yeah. So they need connectivity in wherever those programs are happening. And so that's when the Lift Zones program launched really at the beginning of this year. One of the first batches of Lift Zones that we launched was actually in Pittsburgh. So back in January of this year, we announced 8 Lift Zones in Pittsburgh. And those were at places like community centers that the Housing Authority for the City of Pittsburgh runs, Boys and Girls Clubs, Gwen's Girls locations. And that was one of our first batches of Lift Zones that we announced here in the country.
So tell me about what the actual zone looks like. So you go to like a community center. When you get there, obviously there's Wi-Fi available. How do people link into it? How do they know that it's there? Like, give me some details.
So the way that Lift Zones started were really these, like I said, out of school, after school programs. So these are usually partners who already run some type of out of school program for K through 12 students.
Cool.
And they're
drawing the kids in no matter what.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. They are in a community center, whether it is a freestanding community center, a center that's on a housing authority property. And so students, they are registered for those programs already. But now they now are all on their Chromebooks or tablets. And so in some cases, some of these community centers were already Comcast customers. And it really was just a matter of us going in there and saying, okay, we need to make sure that you have connectivity now in other parts of the building that you may not have previously been using, or we need to boost the Wi-Fi signal in this part of the building. In some cases, they were not previously Comcast customers. And so it was a matter of us actually making sure that they had gig speed internet at the center, that we were taking a look at the Wi-Fi within the building itself and making sure it's adequate for the number of students that they were serving. And then our commitment to each of these partners is 3 years of internet and Wi-Fi connectivity to make sure that it sustains.
And you mentioned the word gig speed. That's pretty important for people to know that, like, you're not getting some slowed down, like, okay, we'll get you on the internet in a very frustrating way type of experience, but you're getting on there with some top-notch stuff, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we recognize that the way that students are using the internet at home and in these community centers, that completely changed with the pandemic. They are doing not just what we would think of as traditional internet searches, but they're doing video conferencing with their teachers, video classroom experiences. So yeah, they need robust connectivity.
You're getting up bandwidth, all types of heavy duty stuff. So you got to make sure that it's a great experience for them, keeping them connected. I just love the fact that this is happening, and that really the idea that this is a 10-year commitment, to spend this $1 billion. I mean, like, $1 billion, you think of $1 billion, like the human brain really can't fathom how much money that is when you think about it, just because how much you can spend that fast enough. So you break that down over 10 years, you guys are putting a lot of capital towards bridging this. I just think that's so important, so important. So how do you guys continue to roll forward here in Pittsburgh? What are the plans for more of these centers in Pittsburgh? And more importantly, like, if somebody wants to be a partner with you guys, how can they partner with you and say, hey, I've got a facility, we got lots of kids coming in here, how can we work with you in order to make sure that our center has this connectivity for students and children?
So that's a great question, Jonathan. So what we've seen over the course of 2021 is we have expanded these Lift Zone partners throughout places like, we started with the Housing Authority with the City of Pittsburgh. We now have centers in 8 of the Allegheny County Housing Authority sites. We have expanded into places that are outside of Allegheny County. So in Washington, PA, we have a lift zone at the Lemoyne Community Center, in Wheeling at the North Wheeling Community Center, in the Bel Air, Ohio Salvation Army. But what we've seen is that not only do students need these type of community center based Wi-Fi, places where they connect via Wi-Fi, but we also want to make sure that other underserved populations also have access to lift zones. So people like veterans, seniors, we are in discussions right now with a Pittsburgh-based business incubator that we hope to be able to create a lift zone for. So I would say we are looking for partners, even though in this part of our region, we now have activated more than 60 lift zones in what we refer to as the Keystone region.
It's a lot of lifting right there, man. A lot of lifting.
It certainly is, but the goal is pretty ambitious. We want to have 1,000 lift zones nationwide by the end of this year. So we really do encourage folks, if you know of a program that you think would be a good fit, it needs to be a community center that has some current programming in it. It cannot be school-based. It needs to be a place outside of a school. So whether that's a community center or a place of worship, those usually make sense. And it has to be in our existing footprint. They don't necessarily have to be a Comcast customer today, but they have to be in Comcast's footprint. And we would love to talk to you, especially in areas that are outside of Allegheny County and maybe some of the more rural parts of our footprint.
Let's talk about the rural side, because I mean, that's always been a huge thing, is getting more connectivity out to the rural parts. And Pennsylvania gets pretty rural pretty fast once you get outside of Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, lots of folks, there's just nothing there. And so the idea that you can get a center where people can come to and start getting some of this access on a centralized basis, I think is really important.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we actually, in our Xfinity stores that are right outside of Pittsburgh, we are actively trying to recruit, solicit ideas from members of the public. So if you visit our Xfinity stores in places like Greensburg or Wheeling or Washington, PA, if you just stop into one of those stores and have an idea, our retail employees, they want to hear it. They want to grab those ideas and get some lift zones activated within those locations. Because like you said, you are not very far outside of the city of Pittsburgh before it does get pretty rural. And we know that those community-based programs really are the solution for places like that.
Yeah, so if someone is interested, what's the best way for them to contact Comcast and say, hey, I'm interested, let me see if I qualify?
Like I said, they can certainly stop into an Xfinity store. They can also, if you just go to westernpa.comcast.com, there's a contact us section of that site, and they can just shoot us an email there. We really would love
every option to go there and try to figure out how to get in front of you guys. Whether you go into the Xfinity store, or they can reach out with an email or something like that. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to hear it.
I mean, congratulations on the work so far, but your work, I know, has really just begun. But I am pumped to think that Pittsburgh's got 60 of those 1,000 lift zones that Comcast is trying to pull off across the country. So I feel like Pittsburgh's doing its part, right?
We are definitely doing our part. The rest of our region, we have some really creative solutions with some of these lift zones, and we'd love to see more of them in Pittsburgh. So I'm thinking of, in Reading, there is an LGBTQ center in Reading.
Yeah.
The stories I'm hearing out of that center are really impactful. The director of that center, she describes that lift zone as one that has literally saved the lives of the teens who they serve at the LGBT center. So we would love to see more of that here if people have.
Just love the fact you guys are reaching out and trying to invest in a community like this. It's so awesome. And we love spreading the word. That's why we love doing these Tech 5 Radio one mic stands. Love geeking out with everybody at Comcast, especially on topics like this, Joe. So much fun. So glad for taking the time to talk to me on this today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, that is for sure. Everybody, once again, this is Jonathan Kirshner with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech 5 Radio. Didn't have way too much fun telling stories just like this.